I'm Jay Elias, General Legal Counsel at Dyer-Lake Funeral Home in North Attleboro. Welcome to this episode of Live and Learn, a series of programs designed to be informative, educational, and upbeat, and always intended to enhance and encourage our personal wellness and awareness. In this episode, we're going to explore our memory, our truly fascinating memory. Memory is more complicated than just the notion of trying to remember where you put your keys or recalling an event from the past or even someone's name. If you think about it, without your memory, you couldn't read the clock on the wall because you wouldn't be able to know how to tell time, something you learned long ago. And without your memory, you wouldn't even know how to say hello to someone when you meet them because that too is something you once learned and remembered. Even ordering a cup of coffee and remembering that you like it black or with cream and sugar. These are all things you learned and have been stored deep in your memory banks. You probably haven't given much thought to any of them, and they've become second nature. Yet the truth is that each of those things requires memory and an ability to recall. Your memory allows you to know to close the window when you're cold, to tie your shoelaces so that you don't trip, to zip and unzip a zipper, and to button a button on your jacket. You learn those things once and you've remembered them. They're there in your memory along with a remarkable amount of other information. Memories. They can make us laugh when we remember the times we cried and can make us cry when we remember the times we laughed. Some memories we dwell on, while others we wish we could forget but we can't. Our memories make us who we are. They're more than just a photo album of our lives. They're a repository of all of our life's experiences. And when we talk about our memory, we need to recognize that it's far from a one-size-fits-all word. Long-term memory, for example, can be thought of as a vast store of knowledge and a record of your life's prior events. Short-term memory reflects the faculties of your mind that temporarily hold a very limited amount of information, but in a very accessible state. And then there's something called your working memory, which refers to a type of short-term memory process that's used to plan and carry out your behavior. You'll rely on your working memory to remember the very beginning of this sentence, and as you get to the end of it, so that there is, hopefully, a complete thought. You'll use your working memory to carry on a conversation because it involves your ability to listen and understand the words being spoken, formulating what you're going to say in response, and then saying it. You use your working memory when you bake so that when you're following a recipe, you remember the amount of flour you need or the number of eggs to add to the batter. Your waiter will use their working memory to write down your order as you're speaking it. But if they take the order for everyone at the table, for example, and then enter it into the computer, they're probably transferring that information from their short-term working memory to their long-term memory. Giraffe, airplane, pencil, sidewalk, April, balloon, lamp, wallet, bicycle. When we speak of our short-term memory, we're talking about memory that lasts for only about 15 to 30 seconds, not 15 to 30 minutes or a day or a week, just 15 to 30 seconds. That differs from the way most of us commonly think of our short-term memory. It would be inaccurate for you to say, for example, that you can't even remember what you ate for dinner last night and attribute it to your poor short-term memory. That would, sorry to say, be your long-term memory that may be lacking. Our memory is a tricky thing. Think about the teacher with 20 years of experience who can easily recall their lesson plans from years ago just as vividly as ever, yet they struggle to remember the names of their students sitting right in front of them. We've all driven or walked the same route to a workplace or the local grocery store, maybe hundreds or thousands of times. But if asked to give the names of the streets along the way, many of us would be hard-pressed to remember even a fraction of them. And most of us have no trouble reciting the Pledge of Allegiance or the alphabet or singing the first verses of the Star-Spangled Banner. Some of you know a good portion of "'Twas the Night Before Christmas" by heart, but do you know all of the digits of your Social Security number or your checking account? Your Social Security number is only 9 digits long, but a lot of people consider it a Herculean task to memorize it. And speaking of 9, can you remember the 9 random words that I just said about 30 seconds ago? Did you even know that there were 9 random words listed? Granted, they were offered totally out of context, without any explanation on my part, no cues, no suggestion that you should pay attention. But are you able to remember any of those 9 words I said? Well, here they are again, and for this program, try to remember them without writing them down. Giraffe, airplane, pencil, sidewalk, April, balloon, lamp, wallet, bicycle. When we speak of long-term memory, it can be either explicit or implicit. Explicit long-term memory is what we remember after consciously thinking about it, like the name of your childhood pet or your 3rd grade teacher. Do you remember those? There are 2 types of explicit memory. One is called episodic, and the other is called semantic. Episodic memories relate to the episodes of your own life. For example, a particular Christmas morning or a birthday celebration. Maybe it was the day you were married or the first time you drove a car. A number of research studies found that our episodic memories, which are also sometimes called autobiographical memories, aren't really very accurate because it seems we tend to reconstruct them over time, changing and adapting them based on new contexts in the way we recall them. Our ability to retain episodic memories may also depend on how emotionally powerful the experiences were in the first place. Many of us remember where we were and what we were doing when 9/11 occurred. That event involved powerful emotional reactions, and you were undoubtedly intensely focused on the events as they unfolded. And because of that heightened emotional element and the intensity of your focus, it was easier to process and store that strong sensory input. That, in turn, makes it easier to recall the experience today. And as for semantic memory, that's a type of long-term memory which accounts for your general knowledge of the world. The color of the grass, or the fact that the sky is blue, or giraffes have long necks, zebras have stripes. And unlike episodic or autobiographical memory, studies suggest that we're better able to maintain the strength and accuracy of our semantic memory intact over our lifetime. And another type of long-term memory is called implicit memory, which is made up of memories that we don't have to consciously recall. Our procedural memories are a kind of implicit long-term memory. And those procedural memories allow us to perform certain tasks without consciously having to think about them every time. Like riding a bike, tying your shoelaces, brushing your teeth, or buttoning a button, all things you don't need to relearn every time you do them because they're a part of your implicit memory. Every minute of every day you experience life and create new memories. It's as if you woke up every day and began video recording everything you did, everything you saw, said, heard, everything you smelled and touched. And through your experiences, you remember things, people's faces and names, where they live, how you met them, your birthday, your address and phone number, your name, your parents' name, what color hair you have or had, your favorite songs, the foods you liked and didn't like. You remember that 1 + 1 = 2, and 2 + 2 = 4. You can probably count to 1,000,000 or more, and you can recite the alphabet. And that's just a snippet of what you remember, which is what you know. So in a way, what you know is based on your memory and your ability to recall. So just how much memory can your brain store, and how much can you possibly recall? It's an amazing amount of information. According to a number of studies, the average memory capacity of the human brain is the equivalent of 2.5 petabytes. A petabyte? It's a unit of measurement used in computers. And to put it in perspective, in order to store that amount of data, you would need to upload information that would fill about 1,000 powerful home computers. And for another point of comparison, Yahoo, the internet giant, has a data warehouse to analyze the behavior of its 500 million monthly visitors, and that data system, which happens to be the world's single largest database, uses less than 2 petabytes of storage space. That's less than the amount of memory storage we have in our brains. Clearly, we're not able to retrieve all of that 2.5 petabytes of information from our memory banks. For example, can you even recall those 9 words that I recited? And I'm going to do so again, but in a different order. Airplane, sidewalk, balloon, lamp, giraffe, wallet, pencil, April, bicycle. 9 words. Think back to your very earliest childhood memories. Did you know that we all experience something called childhood amnesia? It's okay. It's according to a study from Emory University in Atlanta, children between the ages of 5 and 7 remembered 60% or more of their early life events. But by the time they reached age 8, they were only able to recall less than 40% of those same events. And as we grow older, sadly, that percentage of recall continues to decrease. And our first palpable recollections seems to stay with us for good when we reach about the age of 3 or 3.5 years, which is the age when the portion of our brain used to store memories, which is called the hippocampus, has adequately matured to handle that task. We're also beginning to develop our verbal abilities about that same age, and having language available to us appears to be critical to forming memories because we can then talk about our experiences, which then reinforces them. And finally, we're developing a distinct sense of self, of who we are at around age 3, which allows us to distinguish us from the outside world. And strong emotional events also tend to burn themselves into our memories at a young age, both the good and the bad. Most of us have one specific memory that's been stamped in our brains as the first memory we have of our life's experience, something which for some reason became worthy of mentally filing away and cataloging in our memory banks. For me, it was my first day of nursery school. But here's a curious thought. According to findings of one published research study, it turns out that for nearly 40% of the more than 6,000 participants in that study who reported a very specific first memory, like my first day of nursery school, that memory was actually not accurate. Ouch. How is that possible? Well, it seems that some of our early childhood memories have been subconsciously inferred, modified, or added to over the years. For example, by having seen photographs of ourselves when we were very young or being told stories from our family about an event. And so, over time, those bits and pieces and images developed into what we thought was a real memory, but may not have been. The result? We're unable to distinguish between the actual original memory and the one which was created and developed over time. So what's your earliest memory? And wouldn't you find it unsettling to know that that memory you've long had may not even be true? Have you ever scoured your home looking for your keys, but you can't find them no matter how hard you look? Have you ever had to ask someone to call you on your cell phone to help you locate it, and it turns out it's right within reach? So why is it that you hear a song on the radio, and even if it's been years since you last heard it, you're able to sing along to almost every word? And what if I had set those same 9 words that I've recited to you to music with a rhythmic beat and a catchy melody? Would it be easier to remember them? Well, chances are the answer is yes. Music. even with all that vast memory storage space in our brains, we're not able to remember everything we want to without a little bit of help, and that's where music comes in. It can transport us in an instant to places long ago, and it can miraculously stir our feelings. We remember where we were, what we were wearing, who we were with, the first time we heard a song. And music can tug at our heartstrings, especially when we hear a song that reminds us of a loved one who's maybe no longer with us. For many of us, music serves as the soundtrack of our lives. It's played when we witness major life events, during significant occasions like our birthdays, weddings, celebrations, funerals. Music provides important cues to help us remember things. Those cues can be visual, like seeing someone's face, or they can be a familiar scent, like the smell of someone's perfume or a freshly baked pie. Why is it that we're able to remember music so well even after many years have passed? Well, it seems those cues provide something that the spoken word alone cannot. Whether it's the rhyme of the words or the beat of the music or a melody that catches our attention and touches our emotion, unlike the spoken word. It could be the breaks, the pauses, the rhythm, or the refrain, the repeated lines or verses, because repetition is a key ingredient to creating a melody's familiarity and a very important element of encoding the music in our memory and enabling us to recall what we've heard later on. There's also something known as chunking, which probably isn't what you think. Chunking involves grouping long segments or chunks of music or other information into related segments. That helps considerably with our recall. Think of when you memorize a phone number. Typically, we group the number by area code, then the next three numbers, and finally the last four. 508, 555, 1212. It provides us with a tidy little package that helps us remember it. It's a cue. By the way, do you remember those 9 words I've been reciting? Try chunking or grouping them together in threes. Giraffe, airplane, pencil. Sidewalk, April, balloon. Lamp, wallet, bicycle. And in addition to beat, rhythm, repetition, and chunking, music often has 2 other important elements that help us to remember: the emotion it evokes and the attention we give it. Emotion provides a stimulating effect, which then increases our attention and our motivation to remember. And it's not just passively listening to music that appears to have a beneficial effect on our memory. Singing and performing music has been shown to reactivate areas of our brain that are associated with memory, reasoning, speech, and even emotion. So music not only helps us to retrieve our stored memories, it helps create new memory pathways. And have you ever heard of something called a mnemonic device? Mnemonic devices are techniques that were developed by the ancient Greeks thousands of years ago to help them memorize lengthy speeches. Mnemonic comes from the Greek word meaning to remember. And the Romans later adopted these techniques from the Greeks, and they actually had memory slaves they called little Greeks, whose purpose was to memorize things for them, sort of like our modern-day external memory hard drive. Successful mnemonic devices help us systematically organize the material we want to memorize, requires us to elaborate on it, and then helps us involve mental imagery in the picture. For example, are you familiar with Roy G. Biv? R-O-Y-G-B-I-V spells out the initial letters of the 7 colors in our rainbow: red, orange, yellow. G is for green, blue, indigo, and violet. Or 30 days, half September. Or I before E, except after C. And I think we all know TGIF. Thank God it's Friday. And wait a minute, have I been here before? Was I in this exact spot as I am now, saying the very same words to you at some point in the past? Or haven't I seen this very person walk past me that exact way while I was standing in this exact same place? Sometimes, just as we experience a new event or a place, we get a creepy feeling that it's not the first time we've been there, and we call it déjà vu, a French phrase that means already seen. Déjà vu has been described as a conflict of sorts between the sensation of familiarity and the awareness that the familiarity is incorrect. It's that uneasy and inexplicable awareness that you really shouldn't have a sense of familiarity, and it causes you to feel as if your mind is playing tricks on you. And what makes déjà vu so unique compared to other memory events is that you're actually aware that something is not accurate about your awareness. Most of us have experienced déjà vu. Neuroscientists say that for the vast majority of us, it's an indication that the fact-checking regions of our brain are working well, sort of preventing us from misremembering events. And in a healthy person, it happens every day. And that's because our memory involves millions of nerve cells that are communicating with one another. It's not to say you experience déjà vu every day. It's to say that it's a normal occurrence. And the more tired you are and the more fatigued your brain is, the more likely it is you're going to experience an episode of déjà vu. And the older you are, the less often you tend to experience it. Or it may be just that you become less able to notice such memory errors. Here's one. There's apparently a link between déjà vu and dopamine, one of the body's neurotransmitters, a chemical messenger of sorts that sends messages between our nerve cells. Seems there was a gentleman in Finland who apparently took a mixture of flu medicines that were known to have a stimulating effect on dopamine, causing him to have persistent déjà vu. And he found it so interesting that he kept on taking the flu medication long after he was ill, just to trigger a continuous state of déjà vu. He ultimately stopped taking the medicine on the strong advice of his doctors, and the phenomenon instantly ceased. And there's also a very significant correlation between our sense of smell and our memory. It could be the cupboard in your grandmother's house where she kept sweets hidden, or the musty smell of a book from the library. And the moment you catch a whiff, the smell brings you back with thoughts of your childhood, visits to your grandparents, or to the library. It seems that your sense of smell may be the best memory trigger you have. Researchers have consistently found greater brain activity associated with our sense of smell than with any of our other senses. And apparently it's due to the architectural layout of our brain. Smells are handled by something called the olfactory bulb, a part of our brain that sends information to the other areas of our body's central command system for processing. It seems odors take something of a direct route from our nose to our brain, including to areas of our brain where emotions are given meaning, remembered, and attached to association. And scents are actually the only sensation that travels such a direct path to the emotional and memory centers of our brain. All our other senses first travel to a region called the thalamus, which acts like a switchboard, and it relays information about the things we see, hear, or feel to the rest of our brain. But with our sense of smell, it's like a non-stop railroad rather than a local commuter one, resulting in an intimate connection between emotions, memory, and sense. Have you ever heard of something called the World Memory Championship? Well, this event has been conducted almost every year since 1992, and it's an organized competition of memory events in which competitors from all around the world memorize several different kinds of information within very limited periods of time. The championship is intended to promote memory as a mind sport, expanding opportunities for what are referred to as mentathletes throughout the world. And it consists of 10 different disciplines in which competitors have to memorize as much information as they can in timed settings, such as an hour's worth of random numbers, an hour each of memorizing playing cards, faces, random words, and numbers, and what's always the last of the 10 memory categories, something called speed cards, where competitors memorize the order of one shuffled deck of 52 playing cards as fast as possible. And I think the most interesting one to me is a category called historic or future dates. Competitors are presented in writing with 80 fictional dates and events in random order. 80. For example, in 1449, ducks fly into Bat's cave. In 2096, candles are lit. In 2088, aliens land in spa tub. And in 1885, hockey team eats peas. 80 such disjointed, fictionalized, random dates and events. Then the information is presented in a new random order, and competitors have 5 more minutes to memorize as many of those 80 dates and events, and 15 minutes to write down the correct year and event for as many of the events as they can recall. And all I asked you to remember were 9 simple words. No dates, no events, no numbers, just 9 words. Think about how important your memory really is. It's not just remembering names or faces or birth dates. It involves remembering how to walk, how to tell time, how to converse with others, how to unwrap a piece of candy. The common denominator of all those things is it requires our memory and our ability to recall. Speaking of which, do you recall those 9 words? Giraffe, airplane, pencil, sidewalk, April, balloon, lamp, wallet, bicycle. It's been said that everyone has a photographic memory. It's just that some of us ran out of film. I'm Jay Elias. Thank you for watching this episode of Live and Learn. I hope you enjoyed it, and I look forward to your joining me again for another program designed to enhance and encourage your wellness and awareness. Until then, remember, it's never too late to learn or to remember. Maybe it's a favorite place and time in your life, or a song, a poem, or a story that's touched your heart. Or maybe it's the memory of someone you loved and lost.